Inshallah, Rahman, so we'll be up for the second part of tonight's talk from now till about 7, and then we'll have a Q&A session as well, and then soon after there will be the ISOC annual general meeting. Hopefully you should all know what that is, where the ISOC gives a review of what we've done over the past year, and you get to ask us any questions and hold us to account for anything that we may have done wrong. And then inshallah we'll break for Maghrib Salah, and then food afterwards which will be served in Student Central. So without further ado, I'll just give a quick introduction of Brother Rahman Mussa. Ustad Rahman Mussa is of Egyptian ethnicity, born in Saudi, grew up in Glasgow, and is now residing in Birmingham. He's a therapist with his own tazkiyah program called Personal Enrichment, helping people to improve themselves. He's also a graduate of Sharia Studies from the European Institute of Humanitarian Studies in Birmingham, and he's also a regular khatib and speaker at ISOCs up and down the country. So inshallah, without further ado, I'll hand over to Brother Rahman Mussa for the second talk.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا ربي لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك. رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبينا ورسوله. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Very rarely do I actually mean it when I say this, and I don't say it actually that often. But after the previous talk, there really is no need for another talk, in all honesty. And subhanAllah, he mentioned many of the things that I wanted to mention, and he, alhamdulillah, didn't mention many things, also left me some space to talk about a few instances of the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ, just before I begin, in front of the Sahaba, he gets onto the first of 3 steps before he gives his khutbah. And he says, Wallahi, he is damned. Once. And then the Sahaba, because the Sahaba are awake, their hearts are awake, their minds are awake. So who's the Prophet, peace be upon him, talking to? He says he is damned. So each one of them thinks that he is talking about him. And so each one of them asks, Who, Ya Rasulullah? And he gets on to the second step and he says, Wallahi, he is damned. And they say, Who, Ya Rasulullah? And it happens the 3rd time. And then they say, the one who hears Muhammad ﷺ and doesn't say Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So it's important to say that because the Prophet, peace be upon him, was mentioned multiple times in the previous talk, and will be mentioned multiple times now. So we're here for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to acquire His pleasure, not to acquire damnation. So just remember that. And if I don't hear it, I'll stop talking because I'm not here to evoke that upon you. And say out loud, don't be miserly. Say out loud, maybe the person next to you forgot or to say it, and you remind them, and then you get the reward for saying it and the reward for the other person or the other people saying it as well. The Prophet ﷺ, he prophesizes. And he says there will come a time where people will be lying down. You know the chairs, those fantasy chairs that they supposedly psychiatrists have, where you lie down like that and he's sitting behind you, or she's sitting behind you so that they can't influence you. One of you will lie down, ala alikati, just chilling out, just lying down, chilling out, and he will say, There will come a time when someone will be lying down and he will say, there is no need for the sunnah of the Prophet. Yeah, he did this, but we can do it better. And look how the Prophet is mocking them. You know, this guy is just, chair critic, vegetable sitting on his couch, and saying, no, we don't need this, let's do this instead. It's a really big warning, a huge warning, a huge warning, catastrophe, that the Prophet, that you fall, or that I fall, underneath the description of someone ala alikati, just chilling out. Yeah? He's not being pricked by a thorn, and he's saying the Prophet should have done it this way or shouldn't have done it that way, or he did it that way, that's his choice, I'll do it another way. The Prophet ﷺ, after the Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, Umar was really angry, writhing, yeah, with wrath. And he says, Ya Rasulullah, you promised us that we would do tawaf. Ya Rasulullah, you promised us that we would enter Mecca. Ya Rasulullah, are we not on the truth? Are they not on falsehood? And the Prophet said, yes, they are. He said, then why are we betraying ourselves? Why this humiliation? And the Prophet, and he raised his voice. He raised his voice above the voice of the Prophet. And the ayah that says, do not raise your voice above the voice of the Prophet. Umar was wrathful. And he says later on in his Khilafah that up till, for years later, he would give away slaves. He would free slaves. Just as a kafara, to try and erase the sins that he fears he acquired from raising his voice above the voice of the Prophet. But look, rationally, logically, to him at least, it made sense. What is this? That if someone comes to us fleeing for safety, we return them back to Mecca, where he'll get tortured and punished and killed, and they can do what they want, and we've got such stringent conditions upon us. What is this all about? And he went up to the Prophet said, did I promise you this year that you'll do tawaf? He said no. He said, then you will have tawaf, but not this year. And he leaves and he's angry. And he goes to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and he says, aren't we upon the truth? Yes. Aren't we supported by Allah because we are on truth? Yes. Aren't they the wrongdoers, the sinful ones? Yes. Then why are we betraying ourselves and humiliating ourselves? And what did Abu Bakr say? He said, did he promise? He said, he promised us that we do tawaf. He said, did he promise you to do it this week? This year? He said, no. Look at Abu Bakr. His heart, his mind, there's a wave between him and the Prophet. He doesn't just follow the sunnah. He has become the sunnah as well. He asked him the same question, did he tell you that it will happen this year? He said no. He said, then it will happen. And he said, in Umar, and there are two narrations, he said, put your foot where the Prophet puts his foot. Okay? Or where he puts it, in the stirrup, when he gets up on to get off the horse. So either on his footstep in the sand, or in the stirrup where he puts it. Put it exactly where he put it. In exactly the same way. Ibn Umar, the son of Umar, used to be walking in Medina, and all of a sudden he would bend down like that, as if someone was throwing something at him, or as a branch. Why are you doing this? Because there was a tree here, and whenever the Prophet used to walk past, he used to go like that. Now this isn't the sunnah. This isn't the sunnah, but this is his love for the Prophet ﷺ. Look at his love for the Prophet ﷺ. Let's go back to Abu Bakr. Because it's all about responsibility. I don't know about this whole Spider-Man thing, but... So, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he is leaving Mecca after having been beaten to a pulp, all on the brink of death. And the first thing that happens when he wakes up, after having been beaten for standing up for the Prophet, the first thing he asks when he wakes up is, where is Muhammad? Is he okay? Where is Muhammad? Is he okay? And his parents are like, Muhammad? What are you talking about? You're close to death. Our whole tribe was about to go and commit suicide against all of the Quraysh, vendetta for what you've, recompense for what you've just, for them doing this to you. We thought you had died. He said, where's Muhammad? Muhammad's okay, he's okay. No, I do not believe it until you take me to him. And he's dying. He just woke up from 3 days of being unconscious, beaten to almost death. And then, time happens, and again he's threatened to be killed, and he leaves his city. He leaves Mecca. Now, Abu Bakr was known by the people. He is very well known, very well versed, known to be versed in lineage. So he'll meet you, he say, oh, that nose is from this and this tribe. Those eyebrows are from this and this tribe. Did you know that your great-great-grandfather was this, and he married that, and he was known for this, and he had this particular skill? And he would make people feel proud. So they knew him. And he was a businessman, so he would be well-traveled. And before Islam, Abu Bakr was the guy you used to go to if you were so in debt that the only way to pay your debt back was to give your wife as a slave to the person who you're in debt to, or to give yourself up or your children. So the people would go to Abu Bakr and say, can you please be my guarantor? And Abu Bakr would not know the person. And he would say, yes, I would be your guarantor. But things there, if you said something, people were truthful. So he, at least he knew that he might have a, but he was the guarantor. He was the, I don't want to say the IMF, because the IMF stands for, garbage and treachery and injustice and subjugation and every bad word you can think of. But he would give out loans to people who were on the brink of catastrophe. This is before Islam. So he's leaving because his people have outcasted him. And a man stops him and he says, you look tired and you're carrying luggage, where are you going? He said, my people have outcasted me. My people have shunned me, have thrown me out. And he said, a man like you, لا ينبغي, or ما ينبغي, is inconceivable that his people, that you should be thrown out. And then he mentions 5 characteristics that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu has. And these are the 5 characteristics that I pray to Allah that Ustad Ilyas would not mention when he mentioned Khadija radiallahu anha. Because she mentioned the same 5 characteristics when the Prophet ﷺ came back from Ghar Hira. And he said, I fear that black magic or I've been possessed. I fear. And she said, no, wallahi, Allah will never betray you. She swears by Allah, Allah will never betray her husband. Why? And she gives 5 characteristics. These are the 5 characteristics that the Prophet ﷺ had. And later on, when Abu Bakr leaves, these are the 5 characteristics that are mentioned by the man about Abu Bakr as well. He says the following: you keep the womb ties, Silat al-Rahim. You keep the womb ties. Number 2, you are truthful. You are truthful. Number 3, you forgive those that harm you. Number 4, you help the weak and the oppressed. And number 5, you support the causes of justice wherever they are. I'll say them again if you haven't written down. You're dumb enough not to have written down, excuse me. Yeah. But if I was saying that, I've written down, that's what I'm going to be saying to you. This is write it with the ink of gold, as the Arabs say. You keep your womb relations, you're truthful, you forgive those that harm you, you help the weak and the oppressed, and you support the causes of truth and justice, wherever they may be. Not just because, there are Muslims dying in Gaza or in Somalia or in Bangladesh. No, justice, we are for justice regardless of who it is and what our history is with them. Even if they did us wrong before, justice is justice. You see those 5 characteristics? This is the characteristics of the Prophet, and these are the characteristics of Abu Bakr before the message. Stop a second, brothers and sisters. This is before the message. Abu Bakr is like this before he receives the message. Does that make sense? I want you to feel the weight of that. Make sure this is before he receives the message. This is before he knows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that before he knows that the Prophet said, that even the smile is charity. Before the Prophet says that putting food in your wife's mouth is charity. Before the Prophet said that playing with your children is charity. Before all of these things, he had these 5 characteristics. A person like that, with these 5 characteristics, they are the people who bring justice to the world. Those are the people upon which Allah chose His religion to be carried upon their shoulders. Those are the people. It wasn't random. He could have chosen the Persians, the Greek, the Romans, the Chinese, the Europeans. But these people a lot of them had these characteristics. If you haven't seen it's on YouTube, Umar ibn al-Khattab series in English as well as in Arabic, watch it. You'll see that he has these 5 characteristics. Well, unfortunately, we have this view of Umar like he was, just come on, who's next? Yeah, this is what we feel. This is the lie or the myth that's been fed to us. It's not true. Watch it and see how loving this man is. How loving. Yes, he was black and white, but so loving. He had these 5 characteristics. On the first day, who here has ever sold anything? It could be on Gumtree, it could be on eBay. Who has sold anything? It could be even selling to your mother, I want to go out now. I don't care. Who's sold anything? Who's persuaded anyone of anything? You don't lift your hands up, I'm going to have to throw stuff. Yeah? If you haven't lifted your hand up, that means you've never really, you don't have a brain, you've never persuaded anyone. Who here has persuaded someone once in their life? Okay, still brainless people. Well, how do you persuade someone to become a Muslim? On the first day of Islam. How do you persuade someone to become a Muslim? What do you say? What's your pitch? What's your pitch? Today we have, all of these, pseudo dawah pitches. Okay, if you die tomorrow, blah 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 blah, right? The guilt trip, shahada. Okay, but what would you say? What would you say? How did Abu Bakr? Because you know what? On day 1, Abu Bakr went out and brought back 5 of the best of your best of Quraysh. And those 5 all of them are amongst the 10 who were promised Jannah. And on day 2, he went out and he got another 5. 3 of which were promised Jannah. So 8 of the Mubashirin bil Jannah, all of what they do is in the charts of Abu Bakr. What was the pitch? What would you say? Come on, seriously, what was the pitch? What is the pitch? Huh?
Did he say that it was because the Prophet Muhammad is a truthful one, because he said it, that means it wasn't true?
Okay, that's quite, could you say that on the street right now?
No, not really.
Would it work? The Prophet, we know him to be truthful, he said he's the Prophet, there's no God but Allah except Islam. It was it was that. But did it work because of what he said? 100% no. Because you try it out for yourself, be scientific. You'll go out today, after this talk, I'll walk up to someone and say, the Prophet said he was the Prophet, except Islam. Right? See what happens. Okay? May want to, wear a helmet or something, but see what happens. Okay? Now, how did they give their da'wah? How did they give their da'wah? So, the Prophet ﷺ, in these years of the private, 5 years of the 3 years of very, very private, and then 2 years after of semi. How did he give da'wah? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says to him, وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ. Tell the closest of your family. So what does the Prophet ﷺ do? What does he do? He invites all of his family to dinner, food. Okay? Who's he inviting to food? Non-Muslims. Okay, ISOC people? Who's he inviting to food? Non-Muslims. Okay? Seriously. Why? Because this is not psychology. This is what they do in Japan. This is what they do in America. This is what they do everywhere. Here in the UK, let's discuss over lunch. Why? Because you're eating, you're in a good mood. Bear that in mind. You're eating, you're in a good mood. So he starts, and he gives his. He starts, I've been sent to you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know me for what I've never lied, etc., etc. And then his uncle gets up and he goes, "Really? Is this why you brought us?" And he hijacked the whole thing. Now, what did the Prophet ﷺ do? What did he do? Did he carry on? Did he stop? If he stopped, what did he do? He let his uncle finish, but then after he finished, then what? He sat down and he then opened the subject again. He said, okay, let's see. Okay, let's see. You just spent how many hundreds of riyal or dinar or pound or euro for this meal, and the guy just got up and hijack him back. He dodged dodged the jab and come in with a left hook or something. No, didn't know. He just sat down and he let them finish. And then what did he do? He called them again to another meal. To another meal. And he went through the same process again. And again he was humiliated. But this time Ali radiallahu anh, he said, I will support you. And Ali was 6 or 7. So everyone laughed. But the Prophet he realized that this 6-year-old man, this giant who's 6 years old. So do you know how he accepted Islam, by the way? He said to the Prophet said to him, I gave him, I'm Prophet of Allah, la ilaha illallah, Rasulullah. And he said, let me think about it. 6 years old, he said, let me think about it. So he goes, okay, think about it and get permission from your father and then come back to me. He goes, give me a couple of days. Yeah, give me a couple of days. So he comes back after 2 days and he goes, remember that thing you told me about? Tell me again. He wants to make sure that in the 2 days that he's thought about it, he didn't change the message and that it was in fact what he is. So the Prophet said, La ilaha illallah, Rasulullah, we believe in this, we believe in that. He said, yeah, that's what I thought. He goes, did you ask your parents? He said, why should I ask my parents for? Did Allah ask them before He created me? So why should I ask them before I decide whether to worship Him? 6 years old. This 6-year-old said, I will support you in front of it. But everyone else laughed. But the Prophet knew the weight of these baby feet. Ask yourself the question, when you come to give da'wah, is it better to give da'wah to someone that you know you can persuade? Or is it better to give da'wah to someone who you know loves you? I'm going to ask that again. Is it better for you to be more persuasive, right? To watch a couple of videos on YouTube, right? About how to do super slick da'wah, right? That really is about insulting people at some level, okay? Or is it about you speaking to people who love you? Which is more effective? Who here thinks a super slick Brill Cream da'wah? Put your hand up. You guys too young for Brill Cream? Yeah, too young, okay. Coconut oil, olive oil, whatever, right? Who thinks that's better? The slick, the linguistic, martial arts, kung fu, right? Really, really persuasive. Who thinks that's better? Or who thinks the one who's lovey-dovey and huggy-huggy?
Depends on your audience.
Depends upon your audience. Hands up. Who thinks the super smart? Hands up. Hands up, don't be shy. 2 people. I'd like I'm going to cut it off. Well, come on. Who thinks super smart? Hands up. Who thinks the lovey-dovey? Okay. And who doesn't think? Which one do you think?
None of them, because you should do it to every individual regardless of how.
Ah, good. Right, so you said none of them you should do it to. Who? So who would you start with? Right? So you got 10 people, you have to start with one. You start with the one who loves you the most, who likes you the most, who you get on with the most, or do you start with the one who you think you can, arm wrestle mentally?
Okay, what if the one you think loves you the most on that day is not feeling all lovey?
She's feeling lovey-dovey and she loves you. Who would you go with?
But my message should persuade them regardless.
I said who you start with. Okay? The sunnah, the way of the messenger of Allah, is that you start with the one who loves you. Abu Bakr didn't have to have a pitch. He didn't need a pitch. He didn't need one. He knew Uthman, he knew Abdel Rahman, he knew Zubair. He knew them intimately. And they knew the Prophet. They know Abu Bakr, they know the 5 characteristics that he has. They know that this man would die for their benefit. And that if this man said, the sky is beneath us and the ground is above us, they would say yes. They would say yes. Poke our eyes out, it doesn't matter, we believe you. You don't have to pitch. Do you see? And so, Muhammad, who does he go with? He goes to his most beloved, Khadija. And then who does he go to? He goes to Abu Bakr. He goes to the children that were living with him. This is the people closest to him. Abu Bakr goes to the people closest to him. Always go to the people closest to you. And this brings up a really important question. Do people love you? Isn't it? You say to go to people you love, to give them da'wah, tell them about Islam, do the non-Muslims love you? Or do we have to resort to the super slick da'wah? Does that make sense? If people don't love you, then you have to resort to the supers, but it doesn't work really, not really, honestly. In Birmingham, I know a brother personally, every week 3 reverts on his hand. I don't like the term revert, right? But 3 people who embrace Islam because of him, every week. Imagine over a year, this guy's got 150, 180 people under his belt. Yeah, but many of them have issues, they need help. They don't know him, first time they ever met him in their life and they accept Islam. Yes, 100% better than nothing. But wouldn't it have been better if society came to us because they loved us? Wouldn't that be better? Isn't that, this is the sunnah of the Prophet ISOC. When that happens, there is no such thing as a far right. There is no such thing. Yeah? Yes, you have people against you, but it's not racism. Yeah? It's not racism, it's just people who hate the truth. Okay, fine. But they're not disguised with the guise of racism or this or that. No, they're just people who love falsehood and that's it. And they hate the fact that you're coming to you see another thing the Prophet does is that he spends time, and once he didn't do this and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down verses to rebuke him, to tell him no, what he did was wrong, this is what he should be done. The sunnah is, the best thing is first of all those that you love, but then secondly those that have some influence over others. That's who you go to. But when someone comes to you, regardless of who they are, you accept them. And he was giving da'wah to the heads of Quraysh, and then a blind man comes up to him and he asks him, tell me about Islam. And the Prophet ﷺ, the man's blind, but the Prophet ﷺ turns around and he looks at him and says, he didn't say anything, but his face was like, I'm busy. I'm getting somewhere here, I'm busy. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings down the surah Abasa wa Tawalla. Yeah? That he scrunched his face and he looked away from the man, and he says, the man who came to you asking for guidance, and yet you go to the man who's running away from guidance in hope that he runs, in hope that he accepts. So, first of all, people have to love us. Really important. First of all, they have to love us. And the only way they're going to love us is if we give them service. I'll remind you of the 5 characteristics. And you'll see that amongst them all, there is this one trait. Womb relations. By the way, the ulama, the scholars have defined womb relations as what? As keeping ties with the people that don't want to know you. It's your cousin who's insulted you. Not the cousin who you want to spend time with anyway. It's the uncle who took away inheritance from your father and now you live in the council estate while he lives in a mansion. That guy, this is what Silat al-Rahim, the relationship, ties of wombs. That's why the reward for it is so immense. Keep your ties with those people. Not the ones who you already live with. Yeah? Never mind, today people break ties with their own mother or with their own brother. That's a disaster. Truthfulness, that you forgive others, that you help the weak, that you support the causes of truth. All of these are about helping others. Every one of them is about being of service to others. Every one of them. And every one of them causes others to love you. As Ustad Ilyas was saying, they hate you, and yet they'll give you the stuff. Can you take care of this, please? It's ridiculous. Think about it. It's beyond conceivable. He's leaving with you his $1 million, his £1 million, his gold, all his assets, the key to his house, and he knows that he's trying to kill you. But he knows that he knows that you know that he's trying to kill you, but he can still trust you. I don't think we're anywhere near that. And that's the truth. We're nowhere near that. So the responsibility of us as Muslims is to have these 5 characteristics, and that's the truth. to have these. Unfortunately, when you go to stop the war or freedom for Palestine or etc. etc. You see a lot of these lefties. Yeah. You see them there, and you see them in the stop the war against Iraq, and you see them in the the thing, what's happening in Kashmir zone. You see them here. You see they're doing the fifth attribute, the fifth characteristic, and we're not. And they don't get rewarded by Allah for it. And we are stupid enough to know that so much awaits us, and yet we don't do everything. We don't do everything. Bilal radiallahu anhu was mentioned. I just want to add this for one reason. Sometimes we talk theoretically, things aren't really felt on the ground. How do we change things practically? Bilal, as Mr. Ilyas said, he's a black man. He's a slave. And in that culture, that's the bottom of the order. And below that as well. Yeah? To be an ex-slave. Now he gets up and he calls to prayer. Where does he get up? On top of the Kaaba. Now the Hanafis amongst you here are going to be like, okay? We're not allowed to face our feet towards the Kaaba. Okay? It's considered bad manners. Right? Yeah, it is. If I was in the Kaaba today and someone put his foot on the Kaaba, on the side of it, never mind go on top of it, I'm pretty sure you'd see like hundreds of people, right, giving him, a talk with their knuckles. Okay? Which is wrong, right? But that's the emotional response that people would have for that. So he gets up on top of the Kaaba. He stands on top of the Kaaba. And what happens? Two men, one of which is Sufyan, before he accepts Islam. And he says to him, what is going on? This is blasphemous. A man standing on top of the Kaaba, a black man standing on top of the Kaaba, a black man, ex-slave, standing on top of the Kaaba. He said, I fear that Allah, look, he's talking about Allah like he knows who he is. I fear that Allah is going to come down with lightning and strike us. And the man next to him, who was very close to accepting Islam, he said, well, it's Allah's house. If it's that bad, Allah will strike him. Don't you worry. Because they all heard about, do you not know what Allah did with the people of the elephant when they came to destroy the Kaaba? Don't worry. If this is blasphemous, Allah will deal with it. And he gets up, does the first takbir, second takbir, he's still alive. Finishes, he's still alive. But you know the significance of that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet didn't just choose him because of his nice voice. Many people have nice voices. Many people have loud voices. Not just that, there's a significance. We are all equal. And this man is on top of many. In Umar radiallahu anhu's time, when he was Khalifa, he's standing in his house or in his office or whatever, and Sufyan and another man are standing outside, and Bilal comes. And they're standing there first, and Bilal comes, and he says, "Idkhul ya Bilal, come in ya Bilal." And they said, "Bilal, right? We're the highest of the high Quraysh, not just that we're free, we're the highest of the high. This is a black ex-slave. Why Bilal?" Another man said, "He accepted Islam before you. He got there first, he got the higher grade. He accepted Islam before you. Why should he invite us before him?" You see the significance of what happened because this man stood up on the Kaaba. You see the difference? You see the difference? This is what we need to touch society with. The real significant things. Yes, we have Charity Week, and it's amazing. But do you know what's even more amazing than that? Is that wallahi, I was in Dundee. I was talking the same talk, but a bit different about hosting humanity. This is our role as Muslims, how to host humanity. Just like when someone comes to your house, how do you host them? How do you host them? Is it just, here you go? Yeah? Is it just, a couple of quid, big issues, no, keep it with you. Yeah, don't worry about it. Right? Just please don't talk to me in the breath, bring him out. Right? Is it like that? Is that what hosting humanity is? Is that paying charity? Or is that when someone comes to your house, you know, if they're traveling, have a shower, rest, here's a room I prepared for you, here's extra clothes if you need it, here's food, you're leaving, take this with you, I've already booked a hotel for you, I know it's a long distance, etc., etc. But we know what hosting is like, isn't it? We are hosts of humanity. After giving that talk, I said to him, look, you do charity week and whatnot. And he said to me, you know what though? And while we were sitting in a restaurant, and there's a buffet, and he said, you just take a left, and you know, 2 roads away, on top of that building, on the roof of that building, are about 500-600 homeless people. On the roof of the building. So not even shelter from the sky. I said to him, that charity week that you just did, how much did you raise? 2-3 grand. How much would that have fed these people? How much would that have fed these people? People starving here. Yes, there are people starving abroad. Do 2 charity weeks. No one said you can't do 2 charity weeks. There's no law against it. Don't be the hamster on the wheel. When the people before us did it, we have to do it this way. Do 3 charity weeks. You can understand how, oh, look at these Muslims, what they're doing. Oh, charity week. Oh, really? Where are you sending money to? Ah, packages, isn't it? Yeah. You can empathize with that. I empathize with that. Yeah. And these dirty Arabs, terrorists. Yeah. I empathize with that. Because I'm not doing it, you know, to them, they don't see me helping the man on the street or the woman who has to go into prostitution because she's got no way out. Or she can't pay her, you know, she's in debt because of drugs or whatever else. She has no other way out. Willing to be nice, if one charity week was just for that. So we're sitting there and the thing's about to close. And I'd already said to them how to do this and how to do that, how to have the mentality of hosting, etc., etc. So I see one of the brothers who's sitting, his mind's going like this. Yeah. I'm like, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, come on. Connect the dot, connect the dot. And he's, you know, his mind's going. And he says, he gets up and he goes to the woman in the back. She let us in. She was closing and said, look, we're coming, etc., etc. We don't want you to make new food, just whatever you got, we'll eat it. He said, what's going to happen to the food that's left? He said, we throw it out. I said, you what? He said, we throw it out. Because you know that 2 streets away there are homeless people on top of a building. She was, yeah, but we throw it out. He said, what if we, the ISOC, came every day and took whatever you were going to throw out and give it to those people? She said, we have no problem with that. No problem. And well, you should have seen the food that was in front of us. I mean, you know, they were thinking about not letting us in, and we spent a good 70-80 pounds there. You guys are thinking, you know, they're going to throw that food away and not make 70-80 pounds. Ridiculous. I don't know what kind of business, that's not business to me. I thought business was about making money. Right? So they're throwing all this food away, and you have the same opportunities here in Bradford. Exactly the same. Someone say, oh, well, what if we get sued for selling bad food or whatnot? There's always ways around these things. There's always ways around it. Some people here are studying law. Are you studying law so you can waste your time? Or are you studying law so that you can use it? Really? Yeah? So I'll end with that. Responsibility is to have these 5 characteristics. If you don't know what they are because you didn't write them down, then too bad. Okay? But serve humanity. Host humanity. This thing about leadership training, I think is ridiculous. There's no such thing as leadership training. There's no such thing. First of all, we're not supposed to seek leadership in Islam. We're not supposed to seek leadership. That's the first thing. And secondly, you're going to teach me to be a leader on a weekend. Really? Hitler needed more than a weekend. Okay? You can't teach me to be a leader on a weekend, I'm sorry. The Prophet took all those years to teach us how to be leaders. And you're going to do it in a week? Super intensive leadership training. It should be instead servitude training. Servitude. Because this is why we were sent to humanity. قل قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم جزاكم الله خيرا. السلام عليكم.
Inshallah, what we'll do now is have a quick question and answer session for the brothers and sisters to ask any questions regarding the 2 topics today. There should be some paper around. If not, then just put your hand up and we'll get you a piece of paper and a pen. And if you want, you can just raise your hand and ask any questions. questions can be directed to both of your staffs or just to one of them. Inshallah, please just raise your hands. Or
it can be written or it can be verbal. Yeah, there's nothing to say that you have to write anything, even if you are a kitchen dweller. Nothing to say that you serious that you can say it out loud, or you can write it if you're
Does anyone have any questions? Usman.
So both of you, inshallah. Just a question for the ISOC for next year. How do you practically make an ISOC more accessible? Because I think it's been a problem with us for this year. So how could you make it more accessible? Both of you.
How do you make ISOC more accessible? First of all, you have to sit down and you have to think, what are the needs of not just the Muslims, but the non-Muslims on campus? What are the needs? What's not being done properly? So when you go to the library, you'll notice that every single year, for your faculty, when you come to take a book out, if you're too late, the book isn't there. Right? So the ISOC should go to the librarian and say, every year, how much of that book is missing? 15? You need to make 15 years, 55? Okay, can we as the ISOC give you those? And that's how you do it. And then you stand on there gifted by the ISOC, and then people know that you have provided the service. And so now when you do Charity Week, your Charity Week is stocking up the library, right? Okay, that's your Charity Week. People come to you now because everyone wants the free book. So they do Charity Week and they're giving out stuff. And now you don't become accessible, not just accessible, you become the go-to, you become fad, you become fashionable. Yeah? People don't take good notes. It would be nice if 4 or 5 Muslims in every single class sat down and took the best notes ever together. Just sat down like that, and the first one took the best notes ever, and then gave everyone those notes afterwards from the ISOC, courtesy of the ISOC. Okay? So being accessible, what usually happens is whoever comes into power is the Khilafah. Right? Well, what he has to do is he has to prove that other people are wrong. Okay? I'm an Ikhwani, I have to prove that the Abdel is wrong, I have to prove the Ikhwani is wrong, the Bandis, the Salafis, the Sufis, let's all fight. Stop preaching to the people who are already praying, who are already fasting, who are already being good to their parents. There are hundreds of thousands of Muslims, never mind non-Muslims, who don't even know what prayer means. Yeah, they pray once a week if they're lucky. Yeah, Jummah, if they're lucky. How many brothers do you know that pray that on campus? So you have to provide needs. Once you provide needs, people will come to you. If you have to go to people, you do something about it.
Just to add a few more points. You see, really this is a subject about connecting. And what we have, I think, with the Muslim community and others, and intra-Muslim community as well, within our community, is a massive disconnect. And we need to realign, reconnect. Now, again, we go back to the example of the Prophet ﷺ says in the Quran, لَقَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِذْ بَعَثَ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِنْ أَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah conferred a great favour upon the believers when He sent them. And this final part means أَنفُسِهِمْ, from amongst themselves. It's very significant because what it means is that the Prophet ﷺ came from amongst the people. He was from the people. And it's explained by Ibn Kathir that he knew everything about their custom and ways. He ate amongst them, he knew how they walked, how they talked. He had Jawami al-Kalam, the best and most eloquent language he could communicate. He was the best communicator amongst them. He knew their social psychology, he knew their heritage, he knew their traditions, he knew their values, he knew how they did business, how they did marriage, everything. And that enabled that process of connecting and having the wisdom to engage and how to engage in that society. So we need to do that. And I always say, when I elaborate on this subject, it's interesting, there's a university in London called SOAS, some of us might have heard of the School of Oriental and African Studies, and interestingly, when it was established by the British Empire as a vehicle to understand the social psychology, cultural heritage of the Oriental world and Muslim world. Why? For the purpose of colonizing. Okay? They understood that if you understand people, then you're able to control people, but that's in a negative model. Now, there's 4 principles that when I look at Seerah, and I use this as a management framework as well, and it works everywhere, and it's based on that min anfusihim, that the Prophet ﷺ, first thing, he always appealed to common sense. The message is simple, it's clear. If you can't connect with someone on the level of common sense, you haven't connected. The more abstract, the more unrealistic, the more bizarre, the more confusing you make it, the more you disconnect from people. And many of us know this personal experience because we grew up within Islam, which was bizarre rituals and empty, and we didn't really feel comfortable with it until someone came and just explained it in a very clear and simple way. And that's also understanding language and communication as well. So always appeal to common sense, and the Prophet ﷺ always did that. Second point is be practical and realistic and change what you can actually change. We are so ambitious. It's good to be aspirational but not delusional. You are never going to meet Obama. I know I got closer to Obama than anyone in this room and I still didn't influence him. You're never going to do it, so we don't, like, you know, this is the sunnah of those people who are qareeb, close to you. And so it's about being practical and realistic and good things which actually bring that. Third thing is understanding human nature. The Prophet had a profound and deep understanding of human nature. And he loved people. And he had he had this real strong sense of connecting with human beings. And accessibility, there's one hadith where the Prophet described that even a slave child could take the hand of the Prophet and walk him all around Medina and he wouldn't do anything. How many heads of state do you find what the most, perceived as insignificant person in that society will just completely preoccupy you? So you are available to people, and you are there for them, and in the times that you actually need them. Okay, but that understanding of human nature is very important. And there's another great hadith, and you might have heard from me before, where that famous incident where a Bedouin, he walked into the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ and started to urinate. Can you imagine a situation like that today? That someone walked into a masjid and started to urinate? But this Bedouin walked into the masjid and he started to urinate in the masjid. The companions, on seeing this, they were going to rip him apart, they were going to set upon him. And when the Prophet ﷺ came to him, he saw the situation. Do you know what he said to the Bedouin? He said, let him finish. Let him finish urinating. Now that is so bizarre and profound, that level of connecting with human beings. Because you know what, you can't have a commonsensical discussion with a person if he's got a bladder and he's bursting to go. You can't discuss things. Let him finish urinating, then he brought some water and threw it over him. But that's the third point, which is understanding human nature. And the fourth point is what? When you do all those three things, common sense, practical, understanding human nature, you get the fourth one. You inspire and motivate people and you connect with them because you're connecting with them. So this is all from that point, anfusihin, that we've got to know, what, in terms of the society that we're dealing with, and we've got to engage in and understand what's going on in order to do that kind of connecting process.
So, just one question for Ustad Rahman. When you asked the restaurant for the leftovers, how willingly were they ready to give the food away? I.e., were they prepared to give the food away every day?
Yeah, very. It's going to waste.
Nice, short answer, so.
It was raised in binary, yes.
But you know what? This is about creating opportunities. This is the thing. People are out there, a lot of people are out there, they want to do something. And this is about people giving some leadership and direction and just enabling other people, empowering them, getting them to do stuff. But there are people, alhamdulillah, who want to do stuff. Okay, we've got to fulfill our leadership role with them. So it's important to do that.
And the ISOC don't have to do it themselves. You just have to facilitate it. You facilitate it, you put the banner on there, and people would love to do it. Muslim and non-Muslim.
As we really are pressed for time, we should have two more questions. Is there anyone from the floor that wants to ask a question? Okay. The next question is, what evidence is there that supports Muslim women seeking knowledge / education that is not Islamic studies, i.e. uni? So I suppose you'll be coming to uni to seek a secular education.
That was written down, obviously, yeah?
Yeah, it was written down.
Good, very good of you to hide behind your paper. There's no evidence to say that otherwise. Yeah, that's the first thing. There's no evidence to say otherwise. This whole multiple personality, schizophrenic split between religious knowledge and secular knowledge. There's no such thing as secular knowledge. And the proof for that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, look into this. He says, وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ. He says, أَفَلَا تَضْبَرُونَ. He talks about the khalq, وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَغْشَاهَا, وَالْفَجْرِ. He talks about, cattle. He talks about plantation. He talks about everything. He said, look and learn and think. So it is an Islamic duty. There's no such thing as secular knowledge. This is Islamic knowledge and this is secular knowledge. These two things do not combine. Otherwise, things will fall apart. It doesn't work like that. All knowledge, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is Islamic knowledge. And maybe the one thing where you can judge is this, should I acquire this knowledge or not, is when the Prophet ﷺ makes a dua, he says, Allahumma rzuqna ilman nafi'a. Oh Allah, give us knowledge that is useful, nafi'a, useful. To the extent that Ibn Taymiyyah and some of the scholars learnt black magic. Not to use it, but how does this stuff work? What happens? What do they do? Because for them, not for me, not for, well, maybe for me if something arises and we need to look into it. But for up until then, it's nothing to do with me. Because it's not nafi', it will not benefit me. But only when people start being possessed all of a sudden, left, right, and center, okay, do I look into that? Does that make sense? But up until then, it's not nafi'. And so that's the one thing, is it nafi'? When the sister is going to go to uni, is she going to learn useful knowledge? If it's a yes, then she does it. And it's the same with the brothers, huh? And it's the same with the brothers. It's the same with the brothers. I personally wouldn't like my son, never mind my daughter, to leave home to learn anything. I would up and leave. Okay, you didn't get accepted in Birmingham. When did you get accepted? Okay, the whole family's going to move there. Yeah? That's my perspective, unless he had an uncle there or something like that. That's something else. If you're afraid of doing something haram, that's something else. But if you're asking, because it's so absurd. You can sit at home and watch Khan Academy and be quiet. It's haram now because it's not about hadith or Quran. So therefore the knowledge is haram. It's absurd. Really, really absurd. Really absurd. And these things, just because someone says, what is the daleel for something, right? What is the daleel? Half the people that use the word daleel don't know what daleel means. Okay? And if you ask them, what is your daleel for needing a daleel, they wouldn't know what to say. Yeah? So just because someone says daleel or is there any evidence before something, doesn't mean that's an intelligent thing that they just say. Right? Just break things down to common sense. There is no... It's good that you hid behind your paper.
Just take one more question from the floor. Got 3 years ago.
Or just give us the half second. Whatever comes.
This question asks is, as Muslim women, the Prophet warned us about ladies wearing their scarves like pom-poms on their heads. How do we educate women about dressing usefully, but modestly without offending them? Without offending them.
As a brother, since we generalize as sisters, all the X-Men here. So as Muslims, first of all, modesty is incumbent upon every Muslim. That's the first thing. Modesty is incumbent upon every Muslim. Shaykh al-Karmadawi has a concept that I mostly agree with, in that the reason why hijab is different for the man than for the woman, and that is that Islam asks the woman to hide those things about her that would otherwise turn her into a sexual object, so that she is dealt with fairly in life. So that the promotion isn't because she's got, this curve or that curve, or she's this flirtatious or that flirtatious, or worse than that. No, it's that she is competent, and the man is competent, and she's just as competent as the man, so you choose 50-50. She's more competent than the man, and you choose the woman. And the Prophet ﷺ said that it is a betrayal to Allah and His Messenger, and Ammat al-Mu'mineen, and all the believers, that you choose not the best person for the job. You choose anyone but the best person for the job. So Islam wants it so that people are modest, so that when you deal with each other is, the dealing is based upon competence and nothing else. Not attraction, not flirtation, not fancy here or there. No, it's just based upon one's time. Now this thing about, I don't know what you call it, but basically the pineapple look, I think that's what it's talking about. Okay? That, the ulama have said that at the time, this was the look of prostitutes. Okay, it's no longer the look of prostitutes. Okay, and if you're wearing a hijab on top of that, this is one opinion. So therefore, it's not. Do you understand? It's like today, walking around with I don't know what, like today, if it's just like, well, for example, in Birmingham, there used to be a street where all the prostitutes used to abide there, right? And it was in a Muslim area. And they cleaned it up. They take video cameras and, you know, anyone, they'd be like, you're going to be on Facebook or whatever. So all of a sudden the place was cleaned up. Now if sisters were to hang about there, we would say this is haram. Why? Because this is what prostitutes do. If you go to an area where girls or women hang around the corners, then it is haram for a woman to go there. Or a man in that, you know, in today's world. Okay? It's haram. Why? Because this is what prostitutes do. So at the time, a prostitute would do that. And so therefore, you're not allowed to give your, you know, to advertise yourself as that when you're, first of all, you can't be that, and secondly, why would you want to have people think that you're that? So some of our have said today, in today's world, that no one thinks so like that, it's not a problem. Others say no, we take it, he said no, and then no without looking into the reasons. But the thing about modesty is important, and the thing about not insulting people is important. And when you explain to them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to give them a fair chance in life, that they're not promoted, you know, even in the States, you know how many CEOs are females? Like 2%. Ridiculous, it's nothing. They talk about this, that, you know, the Iron Lady rusted away yesterday. Has there been another woman since or before? Yeah? Has there been one since or before? No. So these are, but in Islam, we had female judges, we had ulama, there were female, etc., etc. So Islam wants to give a fair platform to people.
You know, the last two questions, I think what I want to do is I want to go back to what I call a kind of defining principle. Now, look, what we've been talking today is about, you know, living the Sunnah in the true sense of what it's meant, not in word but in spirit. This is the key thing. Sometimes we like to play what I call Sharia gymnastics, and you can always twist Sharia, but we know that it's not. When we do that, it's devoid of the spirit. See, again, when we look at the Prophet, and that same verse I mentioned in Surah Al-Imran, the Prophet came yatlu alayhim ayatihi wa yuzakkihim wa yu'allimuhum al-kitab wal-hikmah. So these four things, but of those four, he came to teach the Quran, the ilm of the kitab wal-hikmah, his wisdom, his sunnah, but also what he called tazkiyah, purification of the soul. You see, this is the whole complete development. The Prophet fundamentally, you see, the Prophet came to correct the heart. The appearance of society will always change, and in 100 years' time, if we're around, we'll probably be wearing silver suits. Who knows? It could be new fashion, new trends, new styles.
That's really.
Yeah. The point I'm saying, what never changes is the heart, and what inspires the heart towards excellence, and what also destroys the heart. And we've got to sometimes go back to that, and really come back to that extinguishing of the ego, the self-importance, destroying pride, developing ikhlas, sincerity, truthfulness, humility. We've forgotten these qualities, and sometimes that's why it becomes. So I don't want to insult anyone's intelligence. You know yourself when you consult your heart. I know myself when I consult my heart, right and wrong, and when I've conducted myself. I have to take account of myself. This is the hisab, the muhasiba that the Prophet has inculcated. Take account of yourself before Allah takes account of you. Weigh your deeds before Allah tells you to weigh your deeds. Ask yourself the question about how you dress, whether it is in accordance with the Sunnah or not, whether it's in the real spirit of pleasing Allah, or whether your desires still conquered you. And you know, you're all young people. I've got maybe 20 years and a lot of you, and it takes a long time, even for me in my mid-40s now, to still conquer my ego. It's the hardest thing I've done all my life. Trying to conquer my pride, my sense of self-importance, my sense of ego. When you do conquer your desires in this way, and this is also why you zakihim, that the Prophet came to teach us this important matter. So that should never be left out of the tarbiyah, the personal development of the Muslim, that we're also correcting our heart and developing the inner self, the spirit of what Islam is about. And when you do that, you know, your heart will answer the question itself. Really, it's as simple as that. It's the same with regards to what we're studying here at this university. You could study something, it is ilm nafiya, but like afterwards you go and work in a multinational corporation, okay, that's robbing and pillaging the world. Where's your ethics? I see people in thobes and beards working for multinationals. Ajib, strange thing. Because they haven't focused, they focused on the outside and not on the inside. It's both that's required in terms of that truly embodying the sunnah of the Prophet.
Okay. Inshallah, we won't be taking any more questions. What's going to happen now is that we're going to have the ISOC annual general meeting, where basically we give a review of what we've done over the past year, and you get to questions and hold us to account for anything that we've done. Just before we do move on to that, we'd just like to know that okay for all of you for attending and being patient with any delays and sitting through the whole event tonight. No one is obliged to stay, but you are encouraged to stay for the AGM, so that we gain the most benefit from it. So,
can I just say something?
Yes.
Very quickly, with the last few AGMs and holding other people to account, it's very important that we hold people to account. And since we're all people, that includes ourselves as well. One of the biggest signs of someone's ego running amok on them is that I will have done nothing, even when you invited me to do something, and then at the end of the year I will blame you for why things haven't been done. So put everything into context and don't just judge the executive, but judge everything, from the prayer room, the imam, people who pray, our own akhlaq, the rubbish that we throw on the ground. Be really, be real with this. Be real if you want to proceed, if you want to get better, then be real. Take everything into account. Don't just, this isn't a scapegoat exercise, right? Let's bring near the hand. It's not a Spanish Inquisition. This is supposed to be for the future. How do we build for the future? And you're not going to do that unless everyone holds themselves to account. Jazakallah.
Shall I just give us a few minutes just to get ready for the